Alright, hey guys, welcome to part 14 of my ActionScript 3 platformer tutorial. Today we're going to talk about clinging and climbing back onto the edge of a platform that you fall off of. This is something that's in a lot of games, but I think the best example is probably Super Smash Bros. Except we're not going to have that moment where you can cling onto the edge and then climb up. We're going to just climb right back up automatically. Now, I know I said in the last video, now that I have this better recording software that I don't have a time limit, I'm not going to make as many errors that I have to fix because I'm in a rush, but it turns out we still have one error, and that is, if we are on the ground and we are right up against a block, we can't really jump, because it's expecting us to do a wall jump because we're right there, but there's no handling for if you are doing a wall jump and you're still on the ground, because this only runs if you're not on the ground, and this doesn't have anything for if you actually are clinging to a wall. So we need to throw this in parentheses and then put an or and say char.floor plus char minus char.height divided by 2 is equal to char.y. That's just going to remove the little bit of glitchiness that happens when you're right up against a block and you want to jump up. Like, I would have been right here and I wouldn't have been able to jump. I would have got caught right where I was. But now we can jump without any issue, and then you can still wall jump if you're not on the ground. So that's really the only bug that I found. If you guys have any other bugs, go ahead and leave them in the comments, but that's the only one that I found when I was playing through this after I finished that video. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add climbing. And this is going to be, like I said with the other things, like with wall jumping, this is a bit more high level. By the end of this tutorial, we're going to have some really high level stuff, and I hope you guys like it. I'm going to open up the player class and the block class. So what we want to do is we want to add a lot of variables to our player class. The main one we're going to add is going to be a public variable. We're going to call it climb timer. Let's go ahead and set that equal to 0. And then we're going to use the part right here. We're not going to use the stuff for the wall jump because we don't want it to be where if you're just touching the wall. We want you to actually be pressing against the wall in order to climb. So we're going to need to put these in brackets because we're going to have more than one line. And we're going to say, we're going to throw an if just so we don't get any errors. If obj.type player obj.climb timer plus plus. And go ahead and throw this in both. Now we can go back to our main, and where we have our if statement that sets the jump count back to 0 when we land, we're going to put that in brackets as well, and we're also going to say char.climb timer is 0 when you land. So that's not going to do anything at this point. We still have to add functionality for that. So here in the check stuff function, we're going to add a little something that's going to say if char.climb timer is less than 5. And all of this whole thing, this is what will run if you're not climbing on a wall. It's all the normal stuff that we already had, but we're just going to throw that in this if statement, and then we're going to say else. And that's going to be what's going to happen when we're climbing. One other thing we want to add is we don't want it to just be if it's less than 5. We also want to say char.climb timer is greater than -1. I'm actually going to go ahead down here where I set it equal to 0. I'm going to actually have that set it equal to -1 because 0 is going to be something that we're going to use to start something else and let you get back into the swing of things after you're done climbing. So, up at the top here, we've got some variables that we need to add. Namely, what we're going to do, instead of having an animation that plays when we climb up the side of something, at least for now, what we're going to do is we're going to have two arrays of speeds in X and Y coordinates that our player is going to use to move, get up off of the edge and onto the top of the block. So, we're going to call the first one climb X. It's going to be an array. Now, in order to do this, if we think about this for a sec, our player, let's say he's here, and then the block is over here. We need to go up and over so that we can get on top of the block. So in order to do that, the player needs to go to the right 50 pixels, because that's how wide the player is and that's how wide the block is. So we need to have a set of speeds that adds up 50. And at first, we're only going to be able to go up because otherwise we'll be going into the block, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to have a nice amount of zeros at the beginning. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 zeros. And then we need to add some things, and these all need to add up to 50 when it's all done. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 10. Let's go 6, 16, 6, 22, 5, 27, 5, 32, 5, 34, 36, 4, 40, 43, 45, 46. Throw one more 4 back here. That gets us to 50. And then we need to do the same thing for the Y, and this is actually going to be in the opposite direction because the Y goes from top to bottom rather than bottom to top like it does in math. So, let's see, we're going to go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, that's 20, 25, 31, 38, 46, 53, and we actually want the Y to go up and come back down a little bit because we don't want it to just go right on. We're going to like jump up only a tiny bit while we're doing this. So let's see, that puts us at 53, 59, 64, 68, 71, 73, 74. And then start doing negatives to come back down. 73, 71, 68, 64, 9. I think that actually adds up. I think I just said it wrong because I made these values before I made this tutorial and this worked just fine. I think trying to do that math all fast in my head, I messed it up a little bit. So still use that number, that sequence of numbers. Forget what I was saying as I was typing it because I was off. So those are the values that we're going to use to climb up the side of the block. Now back down here in our check stuff function, we're going to add, here we go. Okay, so in this else, we're going to say if char.climbTimer is equal to 5. That means this is right when you come off of hitting the wall enough times, the timer hits 5, you've registered. Now we're going to set the climb timer to -1. And that's why we wanted to make sure that up here it's greater than -1 so that it doesn't just go right back into the way that things were, because we're now going to use this time to do the climb animation. So we're going to need to add another variable up here, and we're going to call it climdir for climb direction. And then while I'm up here, I'm just going to add another one. It's going to be called climb up. And that's going to act as the timer for our climbing animation. Where'd it go? Here we go. And we're getting so much code, it's hard for me to navigate it. I'm going to have to start minimizing some of this so that we can navigate through it more easily. Anyway, we're going to say climdir equals char.clinging times -1. So we already have this variable because in order for the character to wall jump, the character has to be right up against a wall, and we need the character to be right up against a wall in order to climb as well. So we already know if the character is moving to the right or to the left, but we need to reverse this because it's going to propel you in the opposite direction. We don't want to propel in the opposite direction. We want to propel in the direction that we're facing. So we take the opposite of clinging, and that gives us the direction that we want to go in. And then next, we want to square off our character so that we're not going to have different heights based on where along the block you actually register climbing. So we're going to say equals char.block height. And that's a variable that we're going to add on the player. Public var block height equals 0. And in here, we're actually going to, around this, we're also going to say obj.block height equals this.y. You can go ahead and copy and paste this down to the other one. So now that's going to give us right where we want to start the animation so that we go over 50 and up 50 and we end up right in the exact spot where we want to. Next, we're going to square off the gravity so we don't have any issues when we stop climbing. And then we're going to square off the jumping so that we don't have the ability to double jump in the middle of a climb. That would just mess everything up. And then finally, we're going to set climb up equal to 26 because that's how many numbers we have in our animation numbers. And that's going to be a reverse timer. So in order to execute this, we're going to say char.x plus equals climb x 26 minus climb up times climdir. So what this does is, so we start climb up at 26. We run this, it's going to be 26 minus 26, so that's 0. So that means you take the first value in this array and multiply it by the direction that we're going. That's going to be either 1 or -1, depending on which way our character is facing. And then we're going to say y minus equals climb y. And it's minus equals because, like I said just before, it goes top to bottom instead of bottom to top. 26 minus climb up. And then lastly, climb up minus minus. So now every frame that this runs, we're going to come here, climb up is going to be 1 less, and with that being 1 less, 26 minus 1 less than 26 is 25. That's actually going to be 26 minus 25. That's going to go to 1. Then when it's 24, it goes 2. 23, it goes 3, and so on. So it actually goes up through the array as this number goes down. And so we want to handle it so that when the climb up gets to 0, we're done with the climbing animation. Char.climbTimer equals 0. And that's going to take it away from being -1. And then 0 is going to be back within these constraints so that the normal things can run back and we can go back to those happening. So before we can actually run this, there's one more thing that we need to add, and that's the fact that if we were to run this right now, you would be able to climb any block from anywhere. And that wouldn't be good because if there was a block on top of that block, that would mean that you would climb up it and then you would be inside the block that's on top of it. And we don't want that. So we want to add a little bit of code into our block class that's going to determine whether or not this block is climbable, meaning that it's on the top of whatever stack it's on. So in our load map function, where we create blocks, we're going to add an if statement. we're going to say right in here, if, and then this is going to be a bit complex. I'm going to say, if I equal to 0, or maps index I j is less than, or no, not less than, is not equal to 1. So this part is going to say, basically this is handling it. We're going to check on the right and the left of the block to make sure that the blocks above it aren't there. So, like, if your block is here, you don't want to have a block on top of it here, or you don't want to have a block on top of it diagonally to the left or to the right, because then you would just climb up that, and then you could have just done a little hop to get on there. You don't need to do a climb animation for that. So what this I equals 0 does, or this checks and makes sure that there actually is a row above this row. Because if we try and run this on the first row, we're actually going to add I minus 1. So if we try to run this on the first row, it's going to try and check the negative first row, and that's not going to work at all. It's going to throw an error. So we need to add this little check right here to make sure that that doesn't happen. So then we're going to say, and make sure that this is in parentheses. We're going to say j equals 0, or maps index I minus 1 j minus 1. That's basically the same thing, except now we're doing it in the x direction instead of the y direction, so we're just making sure that this column isn't the column that's all the way to the left. If it is, it's going to throw an error, so that's what this is. If it is the column that's all the way to the left, that's going to be true. It's not even going to check this, so it won't throw an error. And then finally, the third part of this is going to be j is equal to maps index 0 dot length minus 1. This means that it's all the way to the right. It's however many blocks there are in a row minus 1, because it's 0-based indexing instead of 1-based. And that's going to check and see if it's there, because if it isn't, or no, if it is, and we run this maps index I minus 1 j plus 1, then it would throw an error if it was all the way to the right, and then we tried to add 1 to it. So we throw all of that together, add a final closing parentheses, and we're going to say block equals new block, and we're going to put true in the parentheses. Go back to the block class, and we're going to add a variable up here at the top. It's going to be public var top boolean equals false. And in here we're going to say top boolean, but we're going to say equals false there as well. It's going to assume that it's false unless you tell you that it's actually true. And then in here we can just go ahead and say this dot top equals top. And we want to make, in these if statements that handle the climbing, we're going to say if this is a player and this is a top block. We need both of those things to check in order for it to run right, so that you can't just climb any old block. So now we can run this, hopefully, fingers crossed. Oh, it looks like something got messed up a little bit. So it looks like what I had wrong was the fact that this if statement up here was a bit scrambled. I forgot to add this is not equal to 1 right here, and at the end should also be there. They should all be not equal to 1 in the second half. And then the other thing is this little thing right here. This should be a 0, not a -1. Because when it's a -1, as long as you're on the floor, that means you're not able to move, and that's not right at all. So we fixed those two little things. And now, if I kill this enemy, then I can climb up this little... You can't climb this because you're right on the ground, and it's got something diagonally to the right of it, or left. All of those ones, like this one, can't climb, but you can climb this one. You can't climb clouds because you can't grab onto the walls, of course. But now, if we get stuck out here, even an issue, we can just climb back up. So that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you guys next time.